Hello and welcome to West Country Wanderings. Welcome to my monthly vlog for the month of May 2024. Today we're in the village of Shobdon, which is in the northern part of the county of Herefordshire. And on the village green here I just found this, which looks like an old millstone. And behind it there is a cider press. Wonderful to see that. Shobdon is a very interesting place. There's lots of fascinating features here, which I hope to show you around later. Not which is its amazing church. Hopefully that's open later and we'll have a look inside. I'll tell you all about that, as well as telling you the very best of your comments throughout May and the videos, looking back at those that I featured and published throughout the month as well. So I hope you can join me again here on West Country Wanderings on the monthly vlog. And before we go over to the church area, I thought I'd have a closer look at the metal screw mount here, the cast iron bit that screws up and down to press the cider using these wooden plinths here. And I've just noticed that was cast in Coalbrookdale. Now, if you're not familiar with Coalbrookdale, we're going back to the River Severn now. If you remember, I went to Ironbridge, and just outside Ironbridge is Coalbrookdale, which is pretty much the heart, the crucible, if you like, of the Industrial Revolution. So it's amazing to think that that here in Shobdon in Herefordshire was cast at Coalbrookdale, so it probably dates it to around, well, I'm guessing the early part of the 18th century. That's really amazing. Now this unusual and probably most important church here in Herefordshire is the Church of St. John the Evangelist. I'll tell you a little bit more about its history a bit later in the video. But looking around, I found this font which doesn't fit in with the rest of the design of the church. And this font dates from the original church's interior, and we'll see more of the original church's interior later as well, because they're not here, they're just up the hill there. And this was actually thrown out, taken out of the church, and it was found in the grounds or the gardens of the nearby court, Shobdon Court. And it was reinstated here in the early 20th century. Amazing to see that. As I say, it doesn't fit with the rest of the architectural design. So I'm right next to the famous church here at Shobdon. This behind me is all that remains of Shobdon Court, an incredible building, and it forms part of Shobdon's story really, how it all fits together. First of all though, where are we? Well, Shobdon lies about 9 miles to the northwest of the town of Leominster, so we're in the far northwest of the county of Herefordshire here. Leominster would be the nearest town. I think the next nearest town would be Kington, which is out a bit further west in Herefordshire, across towards the Welsh border. So it's a very, very rural area. And the wealth of this area grew up because of the Bateman family, more about which in a bit, but they've got connections to the court and other places, including Northern Ireland, specifically Londonderry, the county of Londonderry, and London as well, because of the style of the interior of the church. Now, the other part of our Shobdon church story lies at the top of this hill, through this beautiful avenue of trees. And alongside the avenue of trees is a wonderful pond, which I think is now just for private fishing. We can certainly view it before we ascend the hill. And as I do so, I'll tell you a little bit about what's been happening on West Country Wanderings during the month of May. Now, last month's vlog came from the Team Valley, specifically the Shelsley's, that group of hamlets there in the Team Valley, just over the border in neighbouring Worcestershire. When I put that video out, I actually published a video that morning. Of course, I couldn't read any of the comments from it because I hadn't even seen them as I was filming that month's vlog. That first video was the Gloucestershire and South Gloucestershire railways in that series. I think it was the sixth one in that series, and it looked at a tramway which turned off the main Midland Railway between Birmingham and Bristol, between Wickwall and Yate. Wasn't huge amounts of the tramway to see, but you can certainly make out lines of it. And the fascinating thing about that video, for me anyway when I was filming, was Yate Court. Wonderful castle type ruin, beautiful set in the landscape there. Had a wonderful comment on that video from Charles Patterson. Thank you very much, Charles, for your comment. Definitely a difficult path to locate. It certainly was. Very peaceful. Tramways will be very difficult to track by their nature, built to be only a bit better than a rough foot and oxen way. It would most likely be a very light duty track. I would expect them to minimise their expenditures on this simple venture. The downslope, which we saw towards the latter part of that video, may have been a cableway where they lowered the carts down to the tramway area. In this case, the second quarry area never got developed as the first before they chose to close it down. And I think you're absolutely right with that, Charles. Obviously, there isn't a great deal to go on in terms of the history books. You can't find anything about this particular tramway in the railway books of Gloucestershire and South Gloucestershire. I only found a reference to it in the book that I showed you on the Cotswold railways that it briefly mentioned. And I do hope to visit Thornbury Museum soon because they have an exhibition of railways in and around South Gloucestershire. I don't know if it'll make any reference to that tramway, but if I can follow it up, I'll bring it to you in next month's vlog. Thank you very much, Charles, for a great comment. Now, the style of the church here at Shobdon has direct connections to one Horace Walpole. The style of architecture that's used in the church is known as Strawberry Hill. Now, I wasn't aware of this, but in London, I'm not that familiar with London, it's out of West Country Wanderings area, of course, and it's a big urban area. There is a place in Twickenham, I think it's at South London, I think it's that far from the River Thames, and it's called Strawberry Hill. It's a huge neo-Gothic mansion. And if you look at the outside of that building, I'll see if I can find a photograph of it, you'll see it replicates what the inside of the church looks like here at Shobdon. So the style of it is called Walpolean because of his connections. And it was also done by what was known as the Committee of Taste. Now, I appreciate that the style of the church here is probably not taste for everyone. I particularly like it, but it's probably one of those Marmite things. But yes, Horace Walpole and the Committee of Taste. And the church here was restored in 2012 to 2014, and the present king, who was then of course the Prince of Wales, came to reopen it in a ceremony then. Now, as you know, I have a keen interest in photography, and when I'm doing my travels in and around the Cotswolds, sometimes if I feel that I've done a photograph well enough, I'll post it on one of the Cotswold groups on Facebook. And a couple of times people have commented on that saying, can you get to see the Cotswolds without a car? Particularly obviously if you're coming from America, you're landing into Heathrow or Gatwick or something, and you're not going to be able to bring your car with you. Or maybe like me, you just hate driving these days and you really don't want to use your car. So I set the seeds in motion to do a video, and that video was Cotswolds without a car. And I took the train to the lovely town of Moreton-in-Marsh, which lies in the northern part of Gloucestershire, just showing you what you can see if you do a circular walk from that town there and what you can see thereabouts, and also using Moreton-in-Marsh as a hub to catch buses to the neighbouring villages like Bourton on the Water and the town of Stow on the Wold. I have done a couple of videos around that previously, but this one was specifically looking at how you can do the whole thing without a car. I had some great comments on that, including from somebody who does indeed live in America, and that was Daryl. Thanks very much for Daryl. I think Daryl is hoping to come to the Cotswolds later in the year, so it's given him some food for thought about how he can do that. I had another comment also from Malcolm Richardson. Enjoyable walk in the freshly minted colours and sounds of springtime. It certainly makes the case for car-free exploration of the many outstanding areas of the Cotswolds, which can be reached by a combination of car, walking and bus. Indeed so. As you point out, both Moreton and Evesham are excellent hubs for wider exploration. They're really worth exploring both those towns in their own right. To improve car-free access, I think there is a strong case for improving bus coverage and reopening stations on the Cotswold line. For example, Chipping Campden. Thank you very much, Malcolm. And I totally agree with you. Chipping Campden is, again, one of those busier touristy places in the Cotswolds, so great to have a station there. The Cotswold line, though, doesn't go through the centre of Chipping Campden, it's a little bit further to the north, but there is a huge science park there, where all the people that care, of course, arrive by their cars, and there's a massive car park which you can see from the railway line as you go through to the north of Chipping Campden on the Cotswold line, travelling across to Moreton-in-Marsh. So wouldn't that be wonderful to have that open there, and perhaps a minibus taking people right into the town? Food for thought there, Malcolm. Thanks very much for your comment, and also I hope you have a great holiday in the United Kingdom, Daryl. Cheers. Now, that video about doing Cotswolds without a car, should I say, has just provoked a question in my head. Can you get to Shobdon without a car? Well, I've actually driven here today, and the reason for that is it's very early on a bank holiday. This is the late spring bank holiday in May, and it's something like, I got here about 7 o'clock. I left home some stupid o'clock to get here to avoid all the people who will probably be visiting it later today, so I could film it a lot easier. I don't know, to be honest. The nearest railway station to here would be Leominster, and that's on the main line between Hereford and Shrewsbury, what's known as the Welsh Marches line. There is a bus station in Leominster, and there is a fairly busy road that goes further down in the village. So there probably is a bus service. If I can find out what that is, I'll drop that in the usual way below, but then you'd need to walk up to where the church is, and there is a footpath where you can do that, just that. Now, I do like mentioning other fellow YouTube creators, and it was one of those that commented it on my next video, and that was our third visit to the Swindon and Cricklade Heritage Railway, which just lies north of the large town of Swindon. And it was fascinating seeing that, because you had an engine there which I'd not seen before, called Willie the Well Tank, as I say, it's a very strange name, which had been restored, I think, something like 10 years previously, and it's currently on loan to the Swindon and Cricklade Railway for this year only. So if you want to see that train in action, locomotive in action, should I say, then check over Swindon and Cricklade, check out their website first to see their opening times. It's a really nice, friendly, small heritage railway. The great comment was from Wending Our Way, Bruce and Otis. Bruce lives in, I think from memory, Nova Scotia in Canada, has a dog called Otis, and has a channel devoted to all his wonders and explorations in that part of Canada. Thank you very much for your comment, Bruce. Always wonderful to see the history of the rails so lovingly restored and actually being put to good use. That red engine Willie reminds me of one of my childhood books I had, The Little Engine That Could. Marvellous. Yes, I seem to remember that book, Bruce. Yeah, I'm not sure when it came out, but yeah, that does seem to ring a bell, doesn't it? So I'm glad it provoked some childhood memories for you there, and thank you very much for your comment. So I've now climbed to the top of the hill from where the church was, back there where we started our video, and in front of me now, behind the camera, are the Shobdon Arches. I'll show you those in a bit. I think I'll grab a cup of tea and a biscuit first before I do that, because it was hours and hours ago since I had breakfast to get here today. And a beautiful view. There is a pavilion down there, if you can see that, somewhere around there. It looks like a cricket pavilion, but I can't see an accompanying cricket pitch. Perhaps they now use it for growing crops, and maybe people don't play cricket in this area anymore, which is a bit sad, but I'm not entirely sure about that. But if I can find any more about that, put in there. But you've got extensive views going across that way into Worcestershire, across to the Suckley Hills, which we're just to the north of when we were doing last month's vlog. And also we're here in the Arrow Valley, all of the villages around here, not this one specifically, but lots of the others, including where we were at the end of last year at Pembridge, which is only just a couple of miles south of here. They're in the Arrow Valley, the River Arrow, and all of the churches, and again including the one at Pembridge, are linked. They're in the Arrow benefice, including the one here at Shobdon. But the arches, as I say, behind the camera. I'll grab a cup of tea and then I'll show you those. Well, this is a lovely spot on this monthly vlog here, looking at that beautiful view across the River Arrow Valley down there. And then that avenue of trees which you actually drive through coming up into the church, parking outside the church area. It is well marked if you do come here. As I say, I'll see if I can check out the public transport. And I do actually use Travel Line Southwest, although it's called Southwest, it covers this part of the West Country as well. We're here in the West Midlands region. It does cover that as well. But and it's a really good app if you want to find your way using buses. Although I do find buses a little bit trickier than trains, because if they're running late, you don't always get the full information, but still better than driving. Although when I was leaving earlier today, the roads were nice and quiet here. Anyway, I'm just going to have a bit of tea. I've got a satsuma here. Or it might be a clementine, I'm not too sure. I have that, and then we'll have a look at these arches behind me. So these are the famous Shobdon Arches. From whence they came, you ask? Well, they came from back down there inside the church you saw at the beginning of the video. That church was done in the Strawberry Hill style of architecture that we mentioned, and these were preserved and brought up here, this prominent position on this hill overlooking Shobdon village itself. Now, what's special about them is the architecture, the stonemason work. It was actually done by a society of stonemasons in Herefordshire and Worcestershire. They've done lots of churches in and around the two counties round about the 11th century. So around that period of time, a bit like the arts and crafts movement, which came much later, of which there are a lot in Herefordshire and Worcestershire churches as well, you have these. And I'll show you some of it, which you can see more from that side of the arches in a sec. So on this side of the arch, you can really see the stonemason's art there, just above the smaller one of the arches. Just imagine these inside the church over the central aisle. It is difficult to imagine actually, as they're been placed in this prominent hill here, but you can see some spectacular mason work that was done originally here. Now, if you're a regular subscriber to my channel, and thank you very much if you are, incidentally I just passed over the 3,000 barrier. So now I think it's about 3,020, something like that, number of subscribers on West Country Wanderings. I'd like to thank each and every one of you if you've subscribed to the channel. I do very much appreciate that. And also if you watch any of my videos, indeed, but I know some of you watch my videos regularly, because it's a variety channel. I mentioned this before, I don't hone in on one particular thing. And yeah, so thanks very much for that, and appreciate all your comments and likes as well. The next video was one in my short bite photography series. Like I say, I like to mix things up. We do canals and railways and walking in coast and monthly vlogs. And here I decided to go to the city of Bristol. As you know, I don't tend to do urban areas here on West Country Wanderings. It tends to be more about the rural, like we are here today in very, very rural Herefordshire. But that time I decided to go to Clifton, and I've been there before, specifically looking at the suspension bridge on a previous outing there, but I just wanted to walk around Clifton to do a shorter video just with my camera and my 28mm macro lens, taking some shots there. And I had a great comment on that from David Belani, who lives in Spain. Thank you very much from David. I always appreciate your comments, and this one was no exception. It looks a quite vibrant part of Bristol. The restoration of Doc's Garage is excellent, right down to the 4-digit telephone number. It does make you think how times have changed. Indeed they have, so quickly as well. I remember the phone at my parents' house being a shared line. If the neighbours were on the phone, we'd just have to wait. Yes, I remember that too, David. It was actually one of my mum's sisters. She had, I think it was called a party line, and sometimes if you tried to ring through, you could sometimes hear the neighbour on the line, and you had to wait for them to come off the line before you could ring through. Those were the days, long before even dial-up internet. Remember that noises it was connecting? I think that was around about the end of the 1990s. Yes, I really enjoyed my day in Clifton, and thanks very much for that comment, David. And it's a great place to do street photography. I've previously shied away of doing that because I don't tend to feel that comfortable in urban areas, but there were other photographers there, and when there are other photographers around, I do tend to feel a lot more comfortable and relaxed, because I think, oh well, there's other people doing the same thing. I'm not looking out of place. It tends to be the quieter places, like here, when if there's people around, you do tend to get noticed and spotted. Now, before I mention about the next video that landed on the channel, I'd just like to do a couple of shout outs to a couple of fellow YouTubers. Both have fairly recently started, but I really like their content, and I think if you like my channel, you'll like their stuff as well. One is a gentleman who is called Adrian. He lives not that far from where I live, near Stroud in Gloucestershire, and he has a channel called Roaming the Cotswolds. So there's a big clue what his video's about. So if you like my Cotswold Walks video, have a look at Adrian's channel, because he's done walking and exploring some of the more popular places. Like I think he recently did the Duntisbournes. He's also done Castle Combe, so check out his channel. And another new YouTuber is a lady called Jo. Channel is called Life with Josephine. Jo lives over in Droitwich Spa in neighbouring Worcestershire, not that far from where I am here today in Herefordshire. And her videos, well, they're variety basically. She likes exploring gardens. She also shows you her own garden, which is rather wonderful, there in Droitwich Spa. And also she likes visiting interesting places. On recent videos, she took us to the birthplace of Elgar, the famous composer, which I'm sure you're very familiar with. Land of hope and glory and all that pomp and circumstance, and of course he walked up and down the Malvern Hills getting inspiration for that. So she showed you around there. She's also showed you lots of gardens in and around Worcestershire and parts of northern parts of Gloucestershire and other bits and pieces, National Trust places as well. There's also things to do with style, design. I found that interesting. She took us around a shop in Cheltenham Spa. That was really interesting, and also a bit of cookery as well, so lots of variety. So why not check out Jo's channel, Life with Josephine. So it's nice to sit down for a bit. The most watched video on the channel for the month of May, we're not quite at the end of May yet, there might be another one or two that go out before the end of the month itself, but I'm doing this in the last week before the month finishes, and that was when I was down in Cornwall and Devon for a few days earlier in the month, and I had a look at the source of the river Tamar, and also had a look at part of the Bude Canal. I think it was the canal in the title which attracted people to the video, and the Bude Canal is, it's just so fascinating because it's not a linear canal. I mentioned in the video that it's like a cross shape almost, starting at the sea at Bude and then going down to Launceston, a branch across to Holsbury, and another branch further into Cornwall as well. So yeah, it's a fascinating place, and it employed lots of interesting techniques and engineering, including the inclined planes on it. I digress. Had a great comment on that video from Tata Ramoma, who lives in New Zealand. Great to hear from you. And she's answering the question I posed in the video as to why the border between Devon and Cornwall doesn't follow the River Tamar all the way across its length. There's a couple of bits where it does that, it deviates. And she speculates, could it be that the border follows the boundary of the Tamar catchment area and not the river itself? On the map you showed, it appeared the boundary line going above and including a contributory of the river. Cheers from New Zealand. Thanks very much for that. Well, that got me thinking about what it was that had caused the boundary between the two counties to move. And I had a look at the catchment area. That's part of the answer, but it's not the full answer. And it's to do with parish boundaries. Now, when they changed, the border changed, but you can't really have a parish that lies into separate counties. Well, you can, but it's not possible under local government law and legislation in this country here in England. And they changed, and Bridge Rule, which is in Devon, part of it would have lay over into Cornwall if the border had gone straight through down the Tamar. And there was another parish, I think it's called Tamerton near Launceston, which does the same thing. And it was to make sure that those stayed in their appropriate counties, that part of them lay outside or other side of the rivers. Thanks very much for that excellent comment. Now, near here is a lake called Pearl Lake. I think it's over in that direction there, and I probably won't have time to walk over there today, but it's actually the largest natural lake in Herefordshire. I'm not sure how big it is. There is actually a caravan and campsite there, so it's now kind of a tourist spot for people to come out and enjoy the wonderful delights of the Herefordshire countryside. Well, I'm going to start making my way back down the hill, park my car near the church down there, telling you about the videos as I do so that landed on the channel. And the next one was a little bit unusual and different. I've never done a review of any kind. I don't do product reviews on the channel. I don't do sponsorship deals or any of that nonsense, nothing like that at all. However, I stayed in this accommodation in Cornwall and I was highly impressed with it. So much so I thought I would share it with you to see if you also found it interesting, because these types of accommodations seem to be becoming more prominent and more popular, but you may not have stayed in one yourself. And it was a kind of a shepherd's hut. It wasn't a full-on shepherd's hut, but it was that sort of style, and it had everything you needed for self-accommodation for a single traveller like myself or somebody travelling as a couple. I had a great comment on that, including one from the owner of their property. They were delighted with the review I did of it. And I had another comment from Daryl. Hi Daryl. This is just what we've been looking for. What a beautiful place to stay for a few days. Wow, the price is very reasonable. Yes, I thought it was too. I think I paid, it was just over £200 for the 3 nights for Cornwall in May. Actually, that's good value. So check it out. I put a link to the property in the description of that video if you want to go back and have a look at that. Now, you might be thinking that all there is to Shobdon, well, all, because it's an amazing church, is just the church and the arches. Well, also you have the park as well. This is called Shobdon Park, obviously belonging to what was the court and what remains of it these days. There are a number of lakes. One of them is called Canal Pool for some reason. I don't really know why that is, because there's no canal to my knowledge in this area. But there's something else in this area which is of interest, and if you're interested in aviation at all, you'll probably know the name Shobdon, and that's Shobdon Airfield, which lies just a little bit further to the south of the centre of the village. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get in there to have a look around and take some photographs. If I do, I'll put those at the end of the video. But while I'm here, I'll just tell you a little bit about it, because it is an important part of the whole Shobdon package, if you like. It started off in 1942 as an army depot, originally just for logistics. You probably think, why logistics here? Well, there was a railway here once, which I have mentioned before. Remember I said they were not far from the village of Pembridge, which I covered at the end of last year? Well, Pembridge had a railway station on the line that ran from Leominster to Kington. And there were substantial sidings at Pembridge Station, which lies to the north of the village and south of the village here. And there's a flat area of land which was suitable for building logistics warehousing. Later on, the army decided to use it as a parachute training school. And many members of the army that were trained here at Shobdon went on for the D-Day landings, and also I think it was called Operation Covent Garden. Was that to do with Arnhem? I'll check that out and put it in below. It later became an RAF airfield, and later still the US Army arrived and developed the site still further. After the Second World War, it was continued on to be used as the RAF's flying school, specifically for parachute training. When that finished, I think around the middle of the 1950s, the whole site was handed over to the council, the local council, Herefordshire County Council. Today, it's now run as a private airfield, and they run pleasure flights there. They also run taxi services right into Europe. Probably hear an aircraft now. I'm not sure if that's about to land or take off there. And I think there's a memorial around there to some of the airmen that took off from Shobdon here and lost their lives during World War II. So I've now come round to one of the many lakes here at Shobdon Park. This one's called Swanpool, and there's another lake just behind the camera called a Rookery Pool. Wonderful place. There's rights of way that crisscross the path, but you're not allowed to stray really off it, so the footpath is literally just behind where the tripod here on this one. When I was heading down to North Devon for my break down that way, I stopped off a couple of heritage lines, and the first one I stopped off, in fact it was my first break after leaving home down the M5, was on the West Somerset Railway, specifically a beautiful station on the West Somerset Railway called Crocombe Heathfield. The gardens are there, so well tended, and they have a little cafe there with excellent coffee. I digress. It was their steam gala. I don't normally film galas on heritage lines because they get very busy. It was quite busy there, but not overwhelmingly so. And I did a video which is a little bit unusual. There was no talking to the camera from me, there was no music, no narration, no titles. It was just really just to absorb the atmosphere, what it was like at Crocombe Heathfield on that Sunday afternoon. What an afternoon it was. I didn't realise there was going to be a double header coming through. Odney Manor was one of the ones. I've forgotten the name of the other one that was there, but that went through, and then there was a freight train going the other way. Yes, a freight train on a heritage line. They are very, very rare. So that went down, and that landed really well, that video. And I had a great comment from Elizabeth. Thank you very much for your comment, Elizabeth. I love the sounds of birds. And then the announcement of steam arriving, yes, and I think it was a contrast between everything being so quiet. You can hear those birds there really, really loud with the woodlands that surround the station, and then you have a two-headed train, two steam trains coming right into the station. Just a magical moment. Thanks very much, Elizabeth. Might be able to just hear the sound of a coot behind me there. Got Canada geese on there, and I haven't seen any swans there yet, even though this one here is called Swanpool. It was to Cornwall I headed next in the month, and one in my Cornwall series, the Tower That Moved. I've been following this with interest on the local news. ITV West Country covered this in detail, looking at the storm tower that needed to be moved in the North Cornwall town of Bude. And I hadn't seen it for myself, although the commentator who put a comment on this one had, and I'll come on to that in a moment. So I thought while I was in the area, I'd have a look for myself at what they'd done in moving that tower more inland, so it's away from those precarious edge where it's crumbling away into the sea. Well, the comment I had on that video was from Martin Pope, who also runs his own YouTube channel. And Martin writes, when we were there last summer, the tower was in pieces, all lined up in the correct order, ready to be rebuilt in its new location. Nice that you can now walk inside it. We noticed quite a few overhang sections of the coastline, but it's staggering how many people we've seen walk almost up right to the edge. Thanks very much for that, Martin, and that's a great piece of advice there, because that is so true. Beautiful landscape here. Got landscape grounds there with that other pool there. I've just seen a swan in it as well, and a lovely landscape in front of me as well, heading right across the fields. The footpath here is also called In Fuller's Footsteps, part of a Shobdon circular walk. I'm not sure if that was one of the airmen that was killed that took off from Shobdon Airfield or not. If I can find that out, I'll put that in the usual way below. And speaking of walks, it was one in my Lost Railway Walks series, number 13. Normally I avoid 13, don't I? And I go from 12 to 14 or call it 12A or something, but I just ran with it, called it 13. It was a very enjoyable walk following the Wye Valley Railway on the far western edge of Gloucestershire, where it borders the country of Wales, starting near the Welsh town of Chepstow and heading up to the Welsh village of Tintern and going through the wonderful, now restored, Tidnam Tunnel. I thoroughly enjoyed that walk, and beautiful scenery along there following the River Wye as well. I had a great comment on that video from Diana. It was great to hear from you, Diana. As you said, where tourism first flourished, yes it was, that was where tourism started, the Wye Valley. It was actually a vicar from Ross-on-Wye that started to do boat trips in the 18th century, and people would travel some distance from London and the southeast, many of the people that had money, and go on painting holidays. The land of the picturesque movement started all around there as well. It was pleasing to see quite a few people on the Wireworks Bridge. Yes, the Wireworks Bridge, last time I was there a few years ago with my daughter, actually, we had a look at the Tintern station site. The Wireworks Bridge was actually rather rickety, and all of the boards on it were moving. It was looking rather rusty and not great at all. It's wonderfully restored and repainted now, which is great to see. And I'm not sure I could have gone through the tunnel alone. Indeed, I can understand that. It is a little bit daunting when you first enter the tunnel, but once your eyes adjust to the light, it does improve. And I certainly enjoyed the walk there. And thanks very much for your comment, Diana. Beautiful lake behind me. That's the other second one, and you can see the swans on it just going across there. Some other ducks and ducklings on it as well. And I think these are willow trees that have been coppiced probably last year, end of last year. Now starting to sprout with new growth on them again. It's a delight to see. It's beautifully landscaped here. Wonderful Shobdon Park. I highly recommend it if you can get to this part of Herefordshire if you're ever in the area. 2 more videos landed for the month of May. Number 10 was a short bite in railway series which followed on. It was a companion video, if you like, to my Lost Rail Walks number 13, and that was looking at the restored, the old station as it's termed, at Tintern. Obviously on the line of the Wye Valley line, there is a cafe there and a car park, a museum. I decided to film it when it was closed. It was a Monday. I think it's open every day except Mondays, but it does get very, very busy with lots of children running around. Obviously half term this week, it'll be very busy there this week. Perhaps go midweek when the children are on holiday to get the best and absorb the site itself. There is a parking charge there, but I think it was £2.50, and I think that's for 4 hours, so it gives you plenty of time to walk around there. I may do another walk in the future, heading north, back into Gloucestershire again, up to Redbrook, following that there. But that's a delightful point there. And I had a comment on that from Paul, from Wandering with Watto. Hi, Paul. This is a fabulous place. I love the old signage. That's my thing for sure. The signal box is brilliant. I honestly did not know that this was there. Would love to take my dad there. Yes, I'm sure your dad would really enjoy it, Paul. And if you're ever in the area, well worth stopping off there as well. And the final video for this month on West Country Wanderings was back in Cornwall again, at the beautiful and very popular village of Polperro. I caught the bus there from the town of Liskeard with my daughter, and we had a lovely wander around this most Cornish quintessentially fishing village on the southeast Cornwall coast. Beautiful place. It is, or it does get rather busy. I would have preferred to have seen it in the winter time, but it's still a very nice place to go. Great comment on that from Louise. Hi, Louise. Oh, it's great to hear from you from her channel Southwest Sundays, and she has a personal connection to Polperro. So lovely to see Polperro. My parents had a great love of visiting this place, and it's really lovely to now know what they enjoyed so much about it. I really look forward to visiting it sometime myself. I would definitely take the bus, so much cheaper than parking. Thanks for that great comment there, Louise, and I really can see why your parents did enjoy it. That was my very first visit to Polperro. I'm sure we'll be back there probably in the winter to do some more photography there again at some point in the future. Well, that was it. 11 videos landed for the month of May here on West Country Wanderings. And I'd like to thank all of you if you watched any one of those videos, and for watching my monthly vlog here today in the beautiful village of Shobdon in Herefordshire. there'll be lots of things coming up in the month of June, some of which I've already filmed are in the can, some are waiting to be edited, some are waiting to be uploaded, so lots of things happening. There are a couple more from Devon and a couple more from Cornwall. I'm hoping to do a collab in the next few days as well. I have got plans to do the Somerset Coal Canal. I have mentioned this before, but looking at the weather, it's still looking a bit dicey, but I do hope to go there in the next couple of weeks. And I also hope to film part 16 of the Stradwater and Thames and Severn Canals update. Yes, lots of things on that. So that'll be happening in June as well. Until next time, take care of yourselves, look after yourselves. Hope to see you on the channel in June. All the best for now. Bye-bye.